What is up, guys? Welcome to my review for The Flash Season 5. So, as with every season review, I start with telling you guys my favorite episodes of the season, my standout episodes, which this time around are Episode 1 titled Nora, Episode 3 titled The Death of Vibe, Episode 8 titled What's Past is Prologue, Episode 9 titled Elseworlds Part 1, Episode 15 titled King Shark vs. Gorilla Grodd, Episode 16 titled Failure is an Orphan, Episode 17 titled Time Bomb, Episode 18 titled Godspeed, and Episode 22 titled Legacy. So with that in mind, let's get into my review for The Flash Season 5. I want to start this review off talking about the first thing that we all basically formed our opinions on in this season, and that is the new suit that the Flash got in the beginning of the season in the first episode that was given to him by Nora Allen, and it is from the future. This suit was released in posters, and before that we saw it in set photos, and when we saw it for the first time, it was met with a lot of controversy, mainly because of the cowl that looks stupid. They have fixed the cowl for the most part, as they did add the lines to the bottom. They kind of made it fit Grant Gustin's face and head way better, but still the lack of the chin strap just doesn't work, and the fact that the cowl and the suit don't seem to be connected entirely, it does still look very weird for the most part, and that didn't ruin the season. I don't think it made the season worse for the most part, but I do think that visually it just doesn't look as good, and it makes Barry Allen and the Flash look pretty weird, and it sucks because season 4 kind of had the perfect suit, except that suit had a zipper. If they just got rid of that zipper, it would have been the perfect Flash suit, like the perfect live action Flash suit, and there's no way they could do better. So the fact that they went from that to the season 5 suit, and even the updated final season 5 suit, it kind of does suck for this season, at least just visually. Aside from that, I think this season is better than season 4 in basically every way. It's just like the visuals of not only the suit, but the season in general. Like comparing this season to season 4 does look better. I mean, there's nothing in this season that compares to Enter Flash Time or other episodes of season 4, so I think other than visually, the season is basically better in every single way. The main reason why I think this season is a step up from season 4 is in its season-long storyline. Now, I don't think this season is the crazy comeback from season 4 like what Arrow had with its season 5, and that's just because I don't think season 4 of The Flash is bad at all. I don't think it's nearly as bad as Arrow season 4 necessarily, and I also don't think that the comeback that they had this year was as substantial as Arrow had, but I still think that The Flash season 5 is kind of a comeback, as The Flash Season 4 was hated by a lot of the fan base, and I don't think The Flash Season 5 was at all. So in that sense, it is kind of a comeback, but I don't think it's that much better than Season 4. It's just that it definitely has a much better season-long storyline, and I also think that Iris is way less annoying this season. I think Barry is a lot better in this season as well, and in terms of that main season-long storyline, I think that this season probably has a better one than any season come before it except for Season 1. I don't think they're ever going to top the Season 1 storyline because there's no real way they can, but I think the Flash Season 5 definitely tries a little, and the main storyline of this season, it really works. It feels like more so than any season come before it except for Season 1, they really had a plan for the entirety of the season. Most seasons of The Flash kind of stumble here or there, and this season definitely did a little bit, but I think that the goal of the season, where they wanted to be, it was pretty clear the entirety of the time, and once we get to there in the end, basically everything makes sense. Now, let me rephrase that. I think there are parts of the season that didn't really work for me for the most part, but once we got to the end, all of it made so much sense that it's kind of easy to ignore the faults throughout the season. The main storyline, which is Nora coming to 2018 to spend time with her family, which I did think started out pretty good, but then in the first third of the season, it wasn't really the best thing to watch entirely. I didn't really love it for the most part. I thought that parts of it was pretty good, parts of it wasn't, but for the most part, Nora spending time with her family was not my favorite part of what I was watching, but that definitely did evolve in the season. I think that it's pretty easy to ignore because of how the season-long storyline played out, and Nora, her relationship with Iris and Barry, what it built to in this season with the conflict between Nora and Barry, how they build a relationship in the beginning of the season, they did a pretty good job of that, despite the fact that I didn't love watching it, because once they build up to the conflict there, when Barry learned that Nora was working with a Reverse Flash, it worked so incredibly well. One of the most intense moments on The Flash was when he did learn that, when he ran at Nora and ran her to the prison that she was put in, and Barry just lost his mind for a couple episodes because of the betrayal that he felt. The acting was so good from Grant Gustin, and I think Grant Gustin kind of upped his game in this season. He was so good for a lot of this season, for a lot of the more intense emotional moments, or really just intense / emotional moments of this season, and that was what the season was building to, something that I was so invested in. I said this so many times while I was reviewing, but I haven't been this invested in a season of the Arrowverse since Arrow Season 5, and that's kind of awesome for this season because obviously The Flash has kind of lost a lot of its charm lately. Like, not a lot of people love Season 3 or 4. People haven't been invested in The Flash, I feel, so I think The Flash Season 5 kind of needed to bring that back a little bit, and I think they brought it back pretty well, as I was very invested in the main storyline of this season. Even though it didn't start out incredible or anything, I think that how it built up to how good it was in the end and how it ended it off, it all made sense in the end, it all worked in the end, and because of that, I think The Flash Season 5 has a more cohesive, more concise, more well thought out and well executed storyline than any season of The Flash except for The Flash Season 1. And as for the entire Arrowverse, while this season is definitely not as good as some others, the actual season-long storyline is probably the best in the Arrowverse since Arrow Season 5, and definitely up there as one of the best season-long storylines of the Arrowverse ever. That being said, there are certain things about the season that bring it down a notch, specifically the lack of a clear main villain and who some of those villains are. The first 4 seasons of The Flash had a very clear and obvious main villain: Reverse Flash, Zoom, Savitar, and Thinker for Season 1, 2, 3, and 4 respectively. Season 5 kind of took a different turn entirely, giving us 3 separate villains: Cicada version 1, aka Orland Dwyer, Cicada version 2, aka Grace Gibbons, and Reverse Flash, aka Eobard Thawne. I don't think there is really any clear actual main villain, but if I had to pick one, I would go with Grace Gibbons because she was kind of the main conflict of it all. I think that Reverse Flash kind of had a little bit of a different thing where he benefited from a lot of the conflict and he set it in motion, but he wasn't the actual main villain in my opinion, and I think Grace Gibbons was. The Orland Dwyer definitely wasn't, as he wasn't a part of a lot of the ending of the season, but he definitely was the main villain for most of the season, for I think 14, 15 episodes. I don't remember exactly how many it was. I mean, I could check, but I'm in the middle of a recording now, so I won't. But Cicada, I felt like he started out pretty good in the beginning. He was very menacing. I think that he definitely fit the tone of what the season was going for, and he made for some very intense moments where he just beat the hell out of Team Flash, but that got boring really quick. The character got boring really quick. The actor who played him turned out to be pretty bad in the role, and I think the worst thing about Cicada, what we all realized, like, the middle of the season, like, in episode 8, they kind of unlocked the ability to defeat Cicada pretty easily, as they figured out that Killer Frost isn't your typical metahuman, and her powers can't be turned off by Cicada. Right there, they just basically learned how to defeat him. They did not defeat him in the episode, making the episode feel pretty pointless until the season finale, where it turns out that episode set in motion the entirety of the season-long storyline, which that finale saved that episode 8 completely. I don't know if I would have put episode 8 in my standout episodes if it wasn't for the season finale making it a episode that actually mattered at all, except for the part where they figured out that Killer Frost was not your regular metahuman. But after that episode, every single time they went up against Cicada, as far as I can remember, they kicked his ass, they beat him up, they were able to kill him every single time, and every single time that they almost did, he just flew away. That was kind of the same thing earlier on into the season as well in the first couple episodes, but it wasn't really as evident there because there wasn't really a concise way that they can defeat him. It was mostly like he was about to kill Team Flash and then he flies away, or there's like an ex machina or something that he has to fly away from. But in the last in the middle of the season, episode 10 to whenever he was defeated and killed by Cicada version 2, everything in the middle, he was such a non-menace. He was not a character to be feared. He was one of the least menacing villains ever in the Arrowverse, as he was nothing compared to Team Flash. Just Killer Frost by herself, who was kind of able to not only fight Cicada by herself, but also kind of disable the lightning dagger, making the Flash able to defeat Cicada by himself, which he did before letting him go, kind of, because he was about to kill him, but then he didn't. That was easily the worst part of the season, as every single episode felt so tedious, every single episode felt so pointless, and Cicada felt like a terrible villain. That led to him being killed by Grace Gibbons after he took the cure, and replaced by her as well, and that switch kind of was a breath of fresh air, because her debut episode, she was pretty badass, and she was much more of a menacing villain, and much more of a threat than the original Cicada, which is why I think she's a lot better than the original Cicada. But the reason I don't think she's a great villain is because the actress isn't great. She did not get enough screen time in the season, and she was extremely overshadowed by the Reverse Flash. That being said, she was still pretty badass, and I definitely liked her a lot more than the original Cicada, who kind of sucked for a big portion of the season. The end of the season kind of revealed that the two Cicadas are kind of plot devices in the season. They weren't really characters on their own, as they were kind of puppets of the Reverse Flash, who was maneuvering their every move to get himself free from the prison that he was in. It's a genius plan on his part, and the fact that it worked out in the end is pretty insane, but it also, I do believe that it would. That being said, the reason Cicadas just didn't feel like great villains in the end is because they didn't really feel like characters on their own, because again, they felt like puppets of the Reverse Flash, who also didn't really feel like the main villain of the season. It's kind of hard to explain, but I still kind of feels like Cicada version 2 is the actual main villain, but the Reverse Flash is definitely the highlight of this season, as he was the orchestrator of the main storyline of the season. He created the conflict between Nora and Barry, which was a huge plot point that I loved in the season. He created the Sherlock investigating Nora the entire time, and he was the subject of that investigation, what Sherlock was trying to find out, and that was one of my favorite parts of the season. It made me love Sherlock as a character and made him one of the better versions of Wells, and it was one of the most intriguing and interesting parts of the season, and how it all unfolded. He made the season as good as it was. There's no doubt that the Reverse Flash is the best villain in not only the show, but maybe the Arrowverse as a whole. I don't think he's ever been the best villain in terms of just one season, but considering that now at this point he's been the villain of one season of The Flash, one season of Legend of Tomorrow, and also a part of the villain of a crossover, and now the behind the scenes villain of a second season of The Flash, I think there's no doubt in my mind that the Reverse Flash is my favorite villain in the Arrowverse. It's just that he's never been my favorite villain of one season, and that is Prometheus. But looking at this season, looking at everything he's done, I think that Reverse Flash is the best villain in the Arrowverse, and because of that, he just highlights every single episode and every single storyline he is a part of, making this season as good as I think it is. One thing that I actually really like about the season is the lack of side storylines. Now, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of episodes that have their individual side storylines. There are a couple side storylines that are there that are very connected to the main storyline, but those don't really feel like side storylines because, again, they are so connected to the main storyline. They feel very connected, and they feel like they matter a lot. There's really only one big side storyline this season, and that is Cisco Ramon not really wanting to be Vibe anymore, which is good. I don't think it's bad or anything. I really like his girlfriend, and I really like how they built up him revealing to his girlfriend that he is Vibe, and I really liked her reaction as well. What I don't love is how they set up him getting rid of his powers. They created the cure, which is also a side storyline, but again connected to the main storyline of the season because they created it to cure Cicada, but Cisco using the cure in the end, I didn't like that because it just made no sense to me, and I kind of explained that in my review of the finale. But I do think the fact that there was only really one big side storyline in the season that took away from the screen time of the main storyline, it took away from the screen time of other things as well that are maybe individual episodes, like specific episodes have on their own. Like sometimes the individual episodes that are like separate from the main storyline of the season are good. Like last season there was Enter Flash Time, this season there was King Shark vs. Gorilla Grodd, two episodes that are largely unrelated to the main storyline of the season, but they are very good. I think it works better like that than it does for a storyline that spans the entirety of the season that in the end feels pointless because it had no connection to the main storyline of the season. It happened a couple times last season. Here it didn't really, as there was only really one, and that was Cisco, and that kind of did feel it mattered because it did do a big deal for Cisco, and I feel like it is still building up to him leaving the show, probably in season 6, but that's kind of besides the point. My point is that this season didn't have that many season-long side storylines, and I really really appreciate it because season 4 had like 4 too many. Just a couple of small other thoughts about this season. There was only really like 2 episodes of it, but the storyline with the Icicle and Killer Frost, it was good. It wasn't great or anything, and again, it was only 2 episodes, but I definitely didn't hate it at all. Joe leaving the show for a couple episodes, and I understand that the actor had to because of an injury, or at least he really wanted to, but those episodes really made Joe feel like he just didn't need to be on the show at all. He did kind of make the case of the fact that he did need to be on the show, and he was welcome on the show when he did come back, but when he wasn't around, I didn't really miss him, and that felt really weird for myself and the show. Then there is his wife Cecile, who also during those episodes felt like a very pointless character. She kind of felt like a very pointless character throughout the entirety of the season. There were some parts where she didn't, but for the most part, I didn't understand why she was up to a series regular, especially since I don't think she appeared in the majority of the episodes, or at least she didn't appear in all of them. The villains of the week this season are not very good, but that being said, they're a lot better than last season just because there are actually a couple of memorable ones like the Icicle, Ragdoll, and Weather Witch, who all return for a second episode, so they aren't technically villains of the week, but I think that the recurring villains this season are certainly better than last season, as last season didn't really have any memorable villains of the week or recurring villains at all, and the one that was memorable, Amunet Black, she was pretty terrible, so the villains of the week definitely not bad in this season because there are a couple ones that are pretty good. In conclusion, this in my opinion is a great season of The Flash. I haven't been this invested in a season of The Flash in like 3 years. I haven't been invested In conclusion, I think this is a great season of The Flash. I haven't been this invested in a season of The Flash in like 3 years. Season 2, I haven't been this invested in the season of the Arrowverse since like Arrow Season 5, which was 2 years ago. So I definitely think this is a great season of The Flash, a great season-long storyline. Reverse Flash really enhances it. The drama is actually handled incredibly well, like the conflict between Barry and Nora, which was my favorite part of the season. In general, I think that this would have been on par with Season 1 if it hadn't been for Cicada, who definitely was the part of the season that was kind of bad. Both Cicadas, even though the second one was a lot better, they definitely were not a high point for this season, especially when Cicada, the original one, was just a punching bag for Team Flash. That was when the season was kind of a joke to everybody, when it didn't look like it was going to be a good season, but then I think they successfully turned themselves around, switched to a new main villain, Cicada version 2, and unrolled their plan that they had from the start of the main storyline of the season. And honestly, I love it, and I'm incredibly invested, or I was invested. Now it's over, but I was, and I think that this is a great season of The Flash, and as such, I will give it an 8.8 out of 10. So that is it for this review. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. What do you agree with me on? What do you disagree with me on? What do you think about The Flash Season 5? And if you haven't seen it yet, definitely check out my review for Arrow Season 7, which you can check out in the top right corner of this video. So if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for watching.